Well, good afternoon and welcome to today's webinar, Conversations and Insights about the 2026 Legislative Policy Update for School Board Members and District Leaders. I'm Dr. Tracy Frederick, Executive Director of the Kansas School Board Resource Center, and here with me is Ward Cassidy, our KSBRC Senior Advisor, and we're so happy to have him with us today. If you're not familiar with the Kansas School Board Resource Center, you should know that our singular mission is to help school board members be effective advocates for students to focus on improving academic outcomes. So before we begin today, we have a couple of just one really one housekeeping item. We understand that there may be a lot of questions for clarification purposes, and Mike will be able to answer all those questions about the background of the legislation and some of the details of that. But for efficiency's sake, we ask that you type your questions into the Q&A box, and I will ask them at the appropriate time. If you don't see the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, there is a circle with 3 dots. If you click on that, that will put it into the bottom of your screen, and just please put those questions in there and I will be monitoring that and ask them as we go. Also, if you did not hear, this presentation is recorded, so you'll receive a link to the recording to review and to share. We appreciate you doing that and want you to be able to do that. And as always, I will send that link to you to the recording, and we will also archive that on our KSBRC webpage. So this afternoon, we are pleased to have with us Mike O'Neill, who's the CEO of O'Neill Consulting. Mike served as a 2-term elected Speaker of the House and served 28 years in the Kansas House of Representatives. Mike is an attorney, and he also served as the President and CEO of the Kansas Chamber of Commerce. We're excited to offer you this time with Mike, who is well equipped and he is very experienced, as you just heard, to provide you with the background and the insight into recent legislation that affects public schools and your district specifically. It is Mike's passion of public education, and particularly students who are at risk. So there's a lot of different kinds of information out there circulating about the legislation that was passed this session, some accurate and some not. So we look forward to hearing from Mike so you can have confidence and the policy discussions you will have in your school board meetings and implementing the policies for your districts. All of those policies, or our KSBRC policy update legislation, was shared to everybody who's attending this webinar. But if you would like another copy, please don't hesitate to reach out and we'll make sure that we send that to you. So there's a lot of ground to cover. And Mike, I'm going to turn it on over to you.
Well, thank you, Tracy. Pleasure to be here today. Although if I remember correctly, you said I had all the answers, and I just want to throw out a disclaimer that know I know a little bit about what's going on with the legislature, but I'm not going to profess to know all the answers to everything. There's a lot of things to cover today, and just a little bit of background. As she mentioned, I had some legislative experience, and now I do lobbying of the legislature and have a passion for K-12 legislation. I actually chaired the education committee back in the 90s. And the good news from a legislative point of view is I've watched this process a long time, and in terms of the expertise in the education field represented in the legislature currently, it is the best I've ever seen in like 4 decades. We've really got a lot of experienced people, whether they're teachers, whether they're former superintendents or principals or whatever, and we have a lot of expertise going on in the legislature, which is good because the Kansas Constitution places a lot of responsibility for K-12 education with the legislature, both in Article 2, Section 1, which has all the legislative power vested in the House and the Senate. And then Article 6, which is the education article in sections 1 and 2, it is up to the legislature to design an education program that is based on school improvement. Of course, we have the State Board of Education, whose duties are supervisory. So the main power that the State Board of Education has by virtue of legislative delegation. So in Article 6, Section 2 of the Constitution, there is a provision that the state board shall perform such other functions as may be provided by law. And when you see what the phrase is provided by law, that means the legislative branch. So over the course of years, the education article, the quote unquote new article, was passed by the voters in 1964. And since that time, there's about 900 legislative enactments that are on the books. And so each year, the legislature not only passes some new initiatives, but also amendments to pass initiatives. So education is a very active subject matter each year in the legislative session, as it should be, because education, K-12 education, takes up virtually half of the state budget. So it's very, very important. So what I'll be doing today, because you also have the advantage of already having the legislative policy update, is I want to walk through some of the bills that passed this year of import. Not all of them will have implications directly and immediately for board members, but they are initiatives that the board members need to know about and interact with their administration about as things progress. And of course, I'm going to start out with one of the newest and to me one of the most exciting things that the legislature did this year, and that's the bell-to-bell cell phone ban. And I know that there are some questions out there. This is new to everyone. I want to take a moment and just have us take a big breath and understand that the weight of authority nationwide is that we need to limit the amount of social media, cell phone use, even electronic media in the classroom. We're not the first ones that are looking at this. We're kind of middle of the pack, but we know from those who are taking that step to ban cell phone use in the classrooms, they're already seeing dramatic results. One study, and we don't have time to talk about all the studies, but one that was very interesting to me was just a statistical reduction in the amount of bullying that went on as a result of the cell phone ban. So it's meant to provide more time, more focus on the education in the classroom, but it also has some positive side effects, and the reduction in the bullying and the distractions is one of them. So I am here to say that this will work, and it's worked where it's been implemented in the past. Um, and as I think most of the people on this know, the state board did have a blue ribbon task force that looked at this and came up with recommendations. And frankly, that's about all the state board could end up doing is accept those recommendations and push those on out to the districts for them to either accept or reject or modify or what have you. The result of that, which was fine, but the result of that was we ended up with sort of a patchwork quilt of policies. Some of them really good, some of them very weak, some of them very watered down. This was an initiative that was important to the governor. It was important to House and Senate leadership, and that really carried the day. It is one of those issues where it was determined that we need to, what I'd say, occupy the field and have it be uniform application in large and small districts everywhere, because the merit of limiting cell phone use and electronic media, social media use it is important no matter what school district we're talking about, big and small. So that was House Bill 2299. It requires each school district and accredited non-public school to adopt policies and procedures to prohibit student access and use of personal devices during the school day, including a requirement that devices be turned off and securely stored away from the student's person and inaccessible. And I know that there's probably been some questions about, well, how do we do that? And there is no precise requirement, except the strict language of the statute says devices must be turned off and securely stored away from the student's person and inaccessible. And how the districts come up with the policy on what inaccessibility means, whether it's the little packs that you can lock away. This does not require a lot of budgeting and expenditures, but you can certainly do that. Um, Importantly, there are exemptions, as there should be. There are exemptions for time associated with travel to and from a learning experience not located on the school premises, including post-secondary course and career technical education courses, a work-based learning program, or other alternative education opportunities. And then, of course, all students with IEPs or a 504 plan or approved by a licensed physician as a medical necessity, that would be allowed access during the school day if such use is required to implement that plan. The students that need to get a hold of parents are going to be able to use a phone that is provided, but not their cell phone. So there's going to be reasonable access. The important thing is to just not have the students on their devices at any time during the day. Another study that I saw was the tremendous increase in the amount of interactivity at recess time with kids not on their phones and actually interacting with each other. And that is a real positive mental health sign. All educational entities are required to have policies in place. So this is something that the board needs to make sure that there is a policy in place. And the next aspect of this legislation, also very important, is prohibiting school employees from privately or directly communicating with students via social media or requiring the use of social media for any assignment or extracurricular activity. Now, the exception to that is that schools may approve a social media platform to be used for official school purposes, including posting of public one-way messaging pertaining to school functions, activities, or events. So it's not a situation where you can't use any of it. But what we're really trying to eliminate are personal interactions between teachers and specific students by social media. No good can really come from that. And there are ways of communicating important information about the school and about events in a way that is more transparent. Um, the I'm going to move on just a little bit and not get too bogged down with this particular. Were there any questions on this that have come up in the meantime? Okay, I think it's pretty well self-explanatory. As questions come up, please let us know. This is going to be a work in progress. The one thing I would caution about is we're already hearing some noises out there that, oh, well, this is just going to be too onerous and we're just going to have to go back to the legislature and get this changed. This is a really bad idea. Everywhere this has been in place has worked. Students like it, teachers like it, parents like it. And so there will be a tremendous legislative effort against any substantive changes to this new law in the future. There will be a learning curve. There'll be a little bit of adjustment, but this will be good, and we will enjoy the benefits of that, both from the mental health standpoint, from the educational standpoint. I'm going to move on to another bill here quickly. Uh, uh, we did have some changes made to the Innovative School District law. The Innovative School District law, as you may remember, has been on the books for a number of years. Actually, the McPherson School District, Randy Watson, the recently retired Commissioner of Education, was the superintendent of the first Innovative School District. Bev Mortimer with Concordia, who was superintendent there, was the second. Bev now has a key role in JAG-K, the Jobs for American Graduates Kansas program. I hope all of you are familiar with JAG. It's an excellent program for providing services for at-risk kids. And so the Innovative School District law was there to help schools um, think outside the box, and as approved, they are allowed to avoid some of the rules and regulations that may stand in the way. If I remember correctly, with McPherson, it was a need to hire a physics teacher. The only candidate they had that they wanted to make an offer to was actually in Colorado, and the board pushed back on that because they weren't Kansas trained, and so that was an impetus for, there needs to be a way for school districts to be thinking outside the box and addressing some of their needs, whether it is in career technical education, being able to hire teachers that aren't certified or licensed as teachers, but they have experience, training, and expertise to really come in and help a school district. Um, so there was a renewed interest in the innovative school district statute. And in fact, the only real changes are changing the deadline for the district applications to the board from December 1 to May 1. We actually did that so that there would be a longer lead in, and so a school could be thinking about it now for the upcoming school year. It reduces the state board's window to review and take action from 90 to 45 days. There really wasn't a need to extend the decision process that long. And it also reduces the board's window to act upon a request for reconsideration from 60 to 45 days. Another important addition to that was that if an application would be deemed approved by the state board, if they don't act in a timely manner, so they couldn't slow walk an application, if you will. Um, so we already have our first innovative school district. I think it's Wabunsee, um, and they were approved. We were a little concerned because there was a state board meeting where Frank Harwood from the state Kansas Department of Education suggested that there was a good deal of discretion. If the board really didn't want to approve it, they didn't have to. He has since, I think, corrected himself. He read the statute clearly. The existing law was that if the application is in proper form, it's going to be approved. And so I think it was an 8-to-1 vote to approve the Wabunsee School District. And I know that there are other school districts that are interested. It may not be for everyone, but for the ones that are really wanting to do some innovative things, and those opportunities don't exist under existing law, then the innovative school district is a good way to go. Obviously, the way the existing statute reads is you're exempt from rules and regulations and laws, but there are exemptions, of course. You still have to comply with school finance laws, special education, open records, and that sort of thing. But it does give you an opportunity to be innovative. Another bill, H. Bill 2485, contains a number of educational related policy amendments, and I'm going to take some time to walk through this. Some of this is K-12. Some of it has a higher ed point of view. There has been, and I'll just editorialize here for a moment. In my observation over several decades, we've had the Kansas Board of Regents, State School Board, Department of Education, and the legislature working in a parallel universe. All of them have an interest in what they do, but very little cooperation among and between those three entities. And that has caused some friction over time, needless to say. The Constitution has a role for all three of those entities. And the expectation is that those entities cooperate with each other for the good of education as a whole. and I had not seen much of that over time. Um, I'll get into the provisions of the blueprint for literacy in a little bit, but it is a historic exception to this parallel universe situation that we have. It was a situation where the legislature, the State Board of Education, the Kansas Board of Regents, the Kansas Policy Institute, which is the parent of the Kansas School Boards Research Center, worked closely together on a common goal, and that is literacy. Um, um, I'm going to kind of walk through the provisions of 2485, and there's some that don't deal with the uh, um, blueprint for literacy, but I'll get to it here in just a second. Um, One part of that bill permits community and technical colleges to enter into agreements with your school districts for the provision of college courses at the high school premises, rather than having students leave the premises and go to a institution of higher education. We actually have an opportunity here to bring that coursework directly to the premises of the school. And it requires that the agreements adhere to the Kansas Board of Regents service areas and concurrent enrollment policies, which are already in place. So beginning July 1, so the law is already in effect, such agreements must contain the following requirements for the community or technical colleges. Directly purchase any instructional materials and supplies required for the course if such are not provided by the school district. So there needs to be an agreement as to costs. Pay the standard amount as provided in the bill for teaching services to the school district, and pay an amount not to exceed the standard amount for non-teaching site coordinator services directly to any school district employee providing such services. And importantly, the bill requires that any payments made to the school districts be paid directly for teaching services, be paid directly to those teachers that are providing the course as a supplement to the teacher's regular salary. Again, an option, not required, but it is an opportunity to again have these co-curricular activities for college credit actually occurring on the premises of the school district. The bill then goes on to amend the Every Child Can Read Act to add usage of a single statewide universal screening tool that's recommended in the comprehensive literacy implementation plan due to the state board. And that plan was due to the board on June 1, so they already have it. This will be implemented, however, in the school year 27-28. It's not for your upcoming school year. The existing law requires measurements of school achievement through participation in state assessments and through universal screening and assessment tools approved by local boards of education or the state board, so that those are already in place. The bill adds some additional data to be reported to the KSDE on or before June 30th of each school year. So that'll include the number of students in grades pre-K through 8 who performed in the high level, high risk category on the fall screening measure. 2, the number of students in grades K through 3 with an individual student literacy plan beginning in school year 27 and 28, and the number of students in grade K3 who are who exited the high risk category or such students' individual literacy plan by the end of the school year. So we're really wanting to track student progress. Frankly and candidly, this has been a goal of the legislature for some time. There has been quite a bit of level of frustration over the number of kids who are not reading at grade level at 3rd grade. So much concern about that. There's actually been discussion of whether or not those who are not proficient and have a proficient level of reading at 3rd grade, whether they advance to the 4th grade. There's even been talk about this at the state board level. Randy Watson emphasized this without coming out and saying that there should be a retention policy, but that if we don't have uh, proficiency at third grade level, that we have intensive summer school um, makeup projects and programs with um, peer-reviewed studied instruction that gets them ready for fourth grade. Study after study has said if you're not proficient at the end of third grade, you may not ever catch up. It'll be difficult for you to catch up. Um, um, we're seeing now an emphasis from the legislature on collecting data. We want to know how we're doing at the K through 3 level. The bill also contains, as I mentioned earlier, a number of amendments to the Kansas Blueprint for Literacy. Um, Again, it was a historic passage, and now with a passage of some time, and a lot of our teachers now taking the letters training and that sort of thing, the legislature is coming back and tweaking some of the things that we started with, adding some new terminology, and just bear with me because I'm going to walk through quite a bit of the new information from the Blueprint for Literacy. So there are new requirements that members of the Literacy Advisory Committee have expertise in evidence-based literacy practices, educator preparation, science of reading, research and evaluation, dyslexia research. Dyslexia is an area that um, we're still catching up with the identification of kids with dyslexia. We are not asking teachers to be diagnosticians, but we are wanting kids to be screened because that is a real impediment to attaining uh, uh, literacy adequacy. Literacy intervention, implementing science policy development, and implementation of literacy policy development. So we want that literacy advisory committee to have more expertise than what we originally contemplated. The bill transfers the attainment of a transformational goal for credentialing of specific teachers in the science of reading and structured literacy by 2030 and student achievement in the English language arts state assessment by 2033 from being a responsibility of that committee to being a joint responsibility of the state board and the Kansas Board of Regents. Um, the bill replaces the term tier literacy methodologies with the more popular term and the more specific term of structured literacy and evidence-based practices. Beginning in the school year 27-28, again, not this upcoming school year, but beginning in school year 27-28, the bill requires each school district to develop individual student literacy plans, ISLPs, for all students during grades K through 3 and perform a high risk level on fall literacy screening measures. These ISLPs are required to be developed in partnership with a student's parent or person acting as a parent and would include a minimum of 90 minutes per week of interventions that are targeted and tiered, designed to address the student's individual deficiencies, delivered as a one-on-one instruction, small group instruction, tutoring, or summer school program, and a diagnostic assessment, progress monitoring, and interventions until the student achieves grade level performance. And now that may sound on its face fairly onerous. It's basic. These kids have got to get proficient uh, by the end of third grade. The legislature has been frustrated with, and not all districts, but there are many districts that are not using their at-risk funds in a appropriate, even legal way. Two successive legislative post audits have found districts that the districts that were audited were not using their at-risk funds in an appropriate way. So at-risk laws have been updated, not this year, but last year, that the at-risk funds are for above and beyond services for at-risk kids. This is intended to be one-on-one. We identify the kids that are at risk, and then we design programs for those kids and their individual inadequacies or individual needs, and we target above and beyond peer-reviewed experts type program to those kids to get them where they need to be. The bill requires that each school district employ either directly through shared cooperative agreement or by contract a licensed um, reading specialist for each elementary school in the district. And this is going to be beginning in the school year 2029 and 2030. Why a couple of years out? Well, these individuals need to be trained. It's not like we can just, go out on uh, the website and find reading specialists. This is still an evolving situation. But state after state after state has finally come to the realization that we've been teaching reading wrong over the years. And there's really plenty of blame to spread around. It's not a situation um, that that we caused by ourselves. But the science of reading is what we need to be doing. States are picking it up. We are a little bit behind, and I'll just segue for a moment. Mississippi in 20 before 2013, poorest state in the union, lowest amount of money spent per student, was at the bottom in terms of reading proficiency for their public school kids. In 2013, they adopted structured literacy, the science of reading. They bought into it wholeheartedly. Now, 13 years later, they're not only above average, they are at the top in terms of both raising the bottom and raising the ceiling of their students. Just from the standpoint of getting their kids literacy trained and taught literacy. So when we adopted the blueprint for literacy, we were arguably 10 years behind Mississippi. So shame on us, but we're there. We're now training those teachers in letters. Um, we still have a few that would like to continue the old ways. But there's also provisions this year in this bill that'll take care of that as well. Responsibilities of the State Board of Education are as follows. Designate best practices based on the science of reading with structured literacy as the core literacy methodology. And key to this is prohibit the use or teaching of any discredited methodologies, including the 3 cueing system. And this was specifically added to the bill because there were some districts and teachers that wanted to continue to use the discredited methods of instruction. Hope nobody on this webinar was in one of those districts. But it is human nature. We can understand teachers get trained by the colleges, and they don't necessarily want to be forced to learn something entirely new. But believe me, those old methodologies don't work. The science of reading, structured literacy, letters training is the key. We've just got to get that done. The bill also requires applicants for licensure for SPED in grades pre-K through 8 to complete a minimum of 45 clock hours in literacy practicum designed to increase skills and expertise in screening, diagnostic, informative assessments, developing instructional plans, and applying evidence-based practices in an elementary and secondary school setting. Again, I'm talking about responsibilities of the state board. So they should be pushing those down and issuing guidance to the districts.
I
It
have
also
one
requires readings.
question. Oh, I was going to say, Mike, I'm so sorry to interrupt because I know you're involved in talking about this, the responsibilities of the state board. Could you back up just a moment? We have an attendee who would like to know. You mentioned that each district or school is required to have a reading specialist. What year was that? Could you
29,
repeat that?
29 and
Thank
30.
you.
Yeah, both timed to get the first phase of these amendments in place and also time to get these reading specialists trained. So that's a ways off. Yeah,
Perfect.
yeah.
Thank you. Well, I have a follow-up. You said, is this going to be required in each district, or this would be required in each school?
Each school district.
Okay. Thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah. So one or more. I mean, at least one, but just one per district is going to be the requirement. And again, this is really to have somebody in
Right.
place to assist the teachers. But we're getting more and more of those teachers letters trained as well, and um, but this is just adding some assistance. Uh, Again, I'll just keep up with some of the requirements for the state board to ensure that the school districts develop ISLPs and that such development utilizes a literacy plan template developed by the department. Again, we talked about what those ISLPs need, and importantly, we really do need to involve the parents. And I know we'll have some issues with that. You know, some will want to engage, some will not. But we really want to emphasize that these parents need to know. And anecdotally, we're parents do need to know. You know, they may go to a parent-teacher conference and ask how Johnny or Susie are doing, and they may not get a candid response in terms of how far Johnny and Susie are behind in reading. And they need to know, and the parents need to be engaged in this and find out what they can be doing to help as well. They're part of the equation. Um, the other part is to ensure that the educator preparation programs provide evidence that teacher candidates can demonstrate competency of literacy assessment tools and data interpretations, utilization of literacy screening, diagnostic, progress monitoring, informative assessment tools, skills to administer and interpret a variety of assessments, develop plans to guide instruction based on the needs of diverse teachers, and develop plans to guide instruction based on the needs of diverse learners. And again, as an editorial comment, part of the problem with literacy has been higher ed. It hasn't been K-12. It has been that higher ed has been behind in training teachers, and then these teachers come out and teach at K-12 thinking that they have been given the right tools. So higher education has also come around to the realization that they've been teaching reading teachers how to teach reading the wrong way. So this is, again, I can't emphasize enough, this is historic that we now have higher ed bought into this, we have K-12 bought into this, and we're going to turn the corner and we're going to start making some real progress on reading proficiency because the litigation that ended up with forcing a lot of money to be spent has not moved the dial in terms of student outcomes. So it may have helped, but the numbers are still very stagnant. This will make huge changes. And I'm sorry that we've had a full generation of students graduate that didn't have the benefit of this, but it's never too late to do the right thing. Um, so responsibilities of the Kansas Board of Regents now under the bill. Support the State Board of Education action to officially designate best practices based on the science of reading with structured literacy as the core literacy methodology. Again, at the higher ed level, just like at the K-12 level. Support elementary and secondary schools to eliminate any discredited methodologies. So it's pretty much going to mirror some of the same responsibilities of the state board. Approved reading instruction methodologies recommended by the Committee for State Educational Institutions. So, and then we have, as if that wasn't enough, joint responsibilities of the state board and the Kansas Board of Regents. Approve credential requirements for in-service teachers or certification requirements for pre-service teachers at state educational institutions in the science of reading and structured literacy. Develop or make available professional development programs and credential courses through a national online learning program or accredited Kansas post-secondary educational institutions for all Kansas licensed or practicing teachers at low or no cost to the teachers. That has been a concern when the blueprint for literacy first came down and the mandates for letters training came up. We want to be able to assist these teachers and not make it cost ineffective. Jointly, they need to publish standards and course progressions to achieve transparency of Kansas reading education programs. Provide data for the program that tracks the science of reading and structured literacy training, course material, rigor of application. Curriculum is going to be key. Again, that has been a concern of the legislature as well as others, but I know from tracking the legislature, curriculum, good curriculum. We hear anecdotally, and I think Tracy's heard this a lot, that districts are wanting good curriculum recommendations. That's going to be a key. We're finding situations where a third grade teacher and a fourth grade teacher are teaching the same thing in the same school and they don't know it. So there needs to be cooperation. And we need to have a tiered approach to literacy so that we're all working hand in hand.
Might you just take a moment and remind school board members who are on the call about their responsibility in the curriculum adoption and approval process?
Yeah, so this is one of the legislative delegations. So under Article 6, Section 2, I stated earlier that the State Board of Education shall perform such other duties as may be required by law. One of the things that the legislature delegated specifically to the State Board of Education is curriculum, also teacher licensure. And so that is a key function of the state board and probably more realistically, the Kansas State Department of Education. Um, and I will be candid that there's been a lot of frustration over um, curriculum choices and curriculum that aligns with standards. And so there's going to be a heightened focus by the legislature on curriculum, including the possibility that curriculum to some extent may be directed legislatively. The legislature has that power. They've just delegated the power over curriculum to the state board. But I can tell you that the legislature is watching and they want to make sure, and this is where we need input from local boards, from teachers um, uh, to tell us whether they feel comfortable with the curriculums that they have. Are they peer reviewed? Is there good evidence to back these curriculum? Is it going to be aligned with standards? So that is going to be a continued focus.
I know that some school board members are a little uncertain about their role in approving or disapproving. Do they just take the curriculum that's brought to them or do they have that opportunity, responsibility to review and to adopt, or, is it a rubber stamp?
Yeah. So legally, the State Board of Education's power is supervisory. They can make curriculum recommendations, develop a curriculum to push out to the districts. But Article 6, Section 5 um, vests power over the local schools with the local school boards. So, and this is maybe where you were going with this, that the school boards do, local school boards do have influence and power to watch the curriculum and actually advocate for and even approve specific curriculum if they so desire. If there's a problem that they perceive, or if their teachers see a problem that they perceive. Um, the real thing is we want best practices. We want peer-reviewed curriculum. We want curriculum that isn't just downloaded off the internet. We want it to be solid. We want it to be um, tiered in the sense that it is um, appropriate for the grade level. We had teachers admitting that they were not aware that they were not, their curriculum was not aligned with grade level, um, because they were just taking on faith that this curriculum was appropriate. And that's an oversight responsibility that frankly that we all have, that we're making sure that these kids are being challenged. Um, uh, um, Gosh, don't get me started. We don't have enough time. My latest frustration is over the board's decision to lower the cut scores on our assessments, making it impossible for us to do longitudinal tracking of student progress. Um, and we're now no longer aligned with NAEP, National Assessment of Educational Progress. And there was certainly an effort to try to overturn that legislatively. There's still a lot of frustration over that. That's not a topic for today's discussion. But what is important is that we are challenging children with curriculum that is appropriate for grade level. And if it's not, then they're not reaching their capabilities at grade level work, and they get behind. And so that's a function of curriculum, and that's a function of collaborating with the other teachers in the district to make sure it's a tiered approach that we transition from third to fourth to fifth to sixth in a responsible way. Again, study after study has indicated that kids, A, want to be challenged, and two, more importantly, need to be challenged. And when they are challenged, they rise to the occasion.
And
And they
it sounds
rise,
like that the legislation on the blueprint for literacy, some of those changes will certainly help that and help to move that forward as well.
yeah, absolutely. And again, we're kind of late to the party, but it's better late than never. And
Right.
we got some catching up to do. But I'm actually excited about what's going on. And as Tracy knows me, I sometimes get really frustrated with the status of public education, but this being involved in the blueprint for literacy, watching the collaboration between higher ed, the state board, legislature has been very rewarding, and in large part, um, again, I said this at the outset, we have a lot of educational expertise in the legislature currently. There's a Senate Education Committee. There is a House Education Committee, a House K-12 Budget Committee, and those committees are well staffed, and they're well populated with legislators who have a passion for K-12 education. Um, and so I'd like to see us all working together to get things done. And this bill in particular was one example of having that all come together. Also, a shout out to the governor for advocacy on the bell-to-bell ban on cell phones. That was a bipartisan effort. Most things in the legislature, 126 bills approximately passed this year. A good 85% of them are virtually non-controversial. Democrats and Republicans alike are voting for them. The only ones you read about are the ones where there's maybe a partisan divide and there's some partisanship going on. But for the most part, Republicans and Democrats work very well together in the legislature, and this bill here is one example of that happening. Let's see where I was here. Bear with me just a second, and I'll get caught up with where I'm at.
All right. We know that there was it seemed like that, that there was a really good cooperation in the legislature this year, that people seem to be on the same page. But I think, unfortunately, I guess because the situation that we're in here in Kansas, as far as literacy issues, math scores, those kinds of things, really just taking a look at that brought everybody together to say, wait a minute, we've been going downhill for over a decade. We need to stop this downward trajectory, and we're just all going to have to figure this out. You were mentioning before, Mike, of the Mississippi Miracle. We had a webinar on that just a few weeks ago, and I'll send that out with this recording as well. But one of the things that you mentioned, not only the science of reading was brought up as being significant with that, but also as you kind of teased out this idea that at third grade, if students are not reading at the level that they need to be at third grade, then they're held back. One of the things that came out in that webinar, of course, was that something else that you talked about, Mike, was that parents became engaged because they don't want their kids to be held back. And these kids became even more engaged because they don't want to be held back. They want to continue to stay with their friends. So it was a fairly complex and a pretty hard decisions that were made with that. So I know that, as we go forward here in Kansas, we have a lot of decisions that need to be made, but maybe we're starting to kind of come together across the aisle and say, wait a minute, we've got to focus on students first, as I know where you are, Mike.
Yeah, Florida actually pulled the trigger on no advancement to fourth grade if they weren't proficient in third grade. They made the hard choice. They kind of ripped the Band-Aid off. And of course, what you hear, the number one pushback is, well, we don't want to stigmatize a child at third grade. And yet we're graduating functionally illiterate high school graduates. And if that's not stigmatizing the student, I don't know what
Right.
is. I'm not an advocate of that retention policy yet, because I think these tools that we're putting in place right now are going to be very beneficial. I kind of liked Randy Watson's. He tossed out the idea of some really intensive summer school to get these kids caught up. That actually is partially embedded in these changes in blueprint for literacy. It's one of the options for these individual student literacy plans. And so let's do that first. But it's just critical that we get these kids up to par at the end of third grade. So there's going to be some annual reports that are required to be made by the state board and Kansas Board of Regents. I'm not going to take the time to go through those now. That's not of particular interest to local board members. I think we've covered. We're kind of getting close on time. I do want to talk about one more if we've got a little bit of
Sure, if you've
time.
got a couple of minutes, and then I do have a question
Yeah,
for
yeah.
you, but go right ahead. Cover what you need to cover.
Well, see if I can find it in my notes here. Yeah, this is the naloxone
Right.
provisions, and I don't know that this is uh, very well known, but the bill also requires that school districts maintain a stock supply of naloxone at each school. in the district and specify that such supply may consist of one or more standard dose prepackaged nasal spray devices. Um, it is really sad that we've come to this point where we need to do that. But we've also experienced that with kids with asthma and that sort of thing, and epinephrine doses and that sort of thing. But this is for those kids that have experienced exposure to fentanyl. This is not something that teachers themselves are going to be too tasked with. This is a school nurse situation. This is develop a policy where we're going to have it, we're going to store it, and we're going to um, have a protocol for its usage by the school nurse. But I just want participants today to be aware of that. There's also a 1 year only provision because it was in a budget bill, and that is penalties for school facilitated student walkouts. Now, I don't think this was probably going to affect too many that's on this call, but we had a well publicized, very unfortunate circumstance in the Olathe school district this last school term, in which the school essentially facilitated a pretty mass walkout that ended up with students being injured. And there is a proviso in this year's education budget aimed at putting an end to organized student walkouts where the school directly or indirectly facilitates the activity. The State Board of Education is supposed to develop a protocol. Hopefully, this warning shot, the penalty, believe it or not, is the base salary of the superintendent for every day that there is a walkout, and that those walkouts do not count as a required class day. So the penalty for this next year is pretty severe. I'm hoping that the warning shot across the bow will be sufficient, that there is that the kids are there to be educated. We firmly believe in the right to freedom of speech and freedom of expression, freedom to associate, but we really need those kids in the classroom, and not having the schools either directly or indirectly um, facilitating in this case, a very partisan um, walkout that involved then some violence. So I think with that, if there's, I kind
Okay.
of rushed through that, but I think we're at our end of our time. And if there are time for questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Well, I appreciate that. Also within that legislation is the parental consent, or that
Yes,
parents are involved, which I think is also was
yes.
part of that issue, is that parents knowing what's going on. We do have a comment about curriculum, and that there are a lot of districts around that are concerned about financial literacy with their students, and so they have invested in financial literacy curriculum that they're going to bring into the schools. And so the commenter talks about doing that, and that districts will purchase a specific curriculum, but it's not up to the state to tell, which is what you talked about. It's not up to the state to tell districts exactly which curriculum they should buy. That's under the purview of the district.
Yeah, yeah, it is. It is. And what we're hearing, the concern is not. It's kind of twofold. It's the curriculum is being suggested at the department level, but then if they don't, the vacuum is that the teacher goes out on a website and has to try to develop his or her own, and that's not good either, because that we're not assured that that's peer reviewed best practice curriculum that aligns with standards and is specific for that grade level. And so that's where, the sweet spot is to have collaboration and coming up with the right fit for that teacher in that classroom. And that very much is within the bandwidth of the local school boards.
Well, Ward, we're at time. We're just a little bit over, just like a minute over. But do you have any questions or comments that you would like to add before we pull things together and
Oh, thanks,
dismiss for
Tracy.
the
Yeah,
hour?
Mike, that was another great job. Love listening to you, but the comments I'm hearing most is one, very excited about colleges. I mean, somehow or other, they have to produce better reading teachers.
Yes.
And it looks like there's going to be some involvement and checks and balances on that because the comments I hear from superintendent after superintendent is they're getting elementary teachers that really aren't well versed in teaching reading. Then they want a recommendation from them as what curriculum materials should we use? And a lot of times they're not able to even tell their principals, building level principals, what they've learned in college, what would be good. A lot of principals are older. They don't know the new curriculum that's coming out. So really trying to find, that's the biggest complaint I hear is finding a great K through 3 curriculum that has continuity, where when they leave third grade, they have the ability to read. And I wish somebody would put out a book on what is a great method of curriculum for those K through 3 teachers. Uh, and it's out there, but it's hard for them to find. And I hear that time after again. So any suggestions on how to find it?
Well, probably not from the textbook vendors.
Right.
They may be vending a great book, but it's kind of like it's kind of like the pharmacy market where we're giving out free samples and expecting that to work. Um, I I personally don't have a good sense of where to go to get the best curriculum. That is a work in progress, and I'm probably not the best one. Um, but I know it's not just pulling something off the internet.
Right.
I mean and frankly that is truly the responsibility of the Kansas Department of Education to recommend to the board and for the state board to push out. Um, and I know
And
the
I would
legislature
rec
is going to be looking hard at whether that is working or not.
Right.
And I would also point out that even if the State Department has a curriculum, it is going to be important for the local school board to say, does this align with our values? Does this
Exactly.
meet, and will it
100%.
get to our mission? So we know that School Boards for Academic Excellence, an organization that we're a part of, does offer curriculum review and can help with that, or we can help with that in some way. But to be sure that there's a paradigm there, that there's a criterion in which you're looking at your curriculum that is being offered. You have your local experts, which are the teachers that are saying this is a curriculum that we think will work well for us, and make sure that it aligns with all of the values that you're upholding and that you were elected to serve and elected to really bring to the table and to offer that perspective to all the decisions that you make as a school board member and even as a superintendent or a district leader.
Bingo.
Well, we don't have any more questions. I know we're a couple of minutes over, and I know, Mike, that we ask you to cover so many things in a very short amount of time. And so we appreciate you doing that and talking so quickly and trying to get all that information out there. Things that our school board members and district leaders may not consider or may not really know about unless they dig into the legislation, which I know that you have done so well. We appreciate your time. And you being here, we want to also let everybody who's on the call know that if you have not heard the information, that there will be the Supreme Court of the United States made a decision regarding the state's authority to restrict biological males from competing in women's sports. And we want to let you know that there is a Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty will host a webinar tomorrow, July 7th at 10 a.m. If you did not receive the link to that, you can reach out to me and I can send that to you if you're interested in watching that webinar, in which they'll bring information about the implications of that SCOTUS decision to us. Also, later on in July 28th, Paul Runco from Defending Education will discuss concerns raised about the Southern Poverty Law Center's Learning for Justice curriculum program. Very appropriate for what you're talking about, Mike, just to make sure that school board members and district leaders know a little bit about that. If you are not aware, you can find that event on our KSBRC events page or just reach out and I'd be happy to send you the link. If there's a topic that you all are interested in, we will certainly reach out and find an expert to bring information about that topic for you. Don't hesitate to let us know. And we thank you all for joining us today and look forward to seeing you at the next webinar. Hope you have a great rest of your day. Thanks once again, Mike. Thanks
Thank
for
you,
joining
Emily.
us.